Hi there, welcome to another episode of Insights, live here on the NetSupport stand, SD50, live from the show floor at BEC 2024. And I'm absolutely delighted to have somebody with me that I've been a follower of and somebody that I've connected with and had a chance to talk to and share with many times over the years, the lovely Rachel Coathup, who's now working in Australia, not here in the UK, moved back home, working for Texthelp. Primary school educator, lots and lots of experience. I feel like I'm doing your CV intro for you, Rachel. If you don't follow Rachel on social media, Tech Miss C, we'll find her on Instagram and X and all those different platforms. But welcome to the show, Rachel. How are you doing?
Yeah, really well, thank you. It's nice to be back.
Yeah, good flight over?
Yeah, nice and quick, which is good.
Are you sure it was quick? You must have slept
it feels like it, yeah. Slept and lots of movies, so it's always nice.
So I gave a little bit of your sort of background there, but just sort of share for our audience, what is your background in education?
Yeah, so I started teaching in Melbourne in Australia and then moved over to London and started teaching, and then really have always had a passion for teaching teachers how to use technology in the classroom to help them save time, but also just to create greater learning experiences for all learners.
Now, if you don't follow Rachel, one thing I would say about her is she is an absolute powerhouse when it comes to her sharing. Now, if you know us here at NetSupport and my work as well, with my ICT evangelist hat on, I'm like with Obi-Wan over here compared to like a sort of Padawan over here. Her sharing is phenomenal. And she has a really good knack of making quite complex things actually seem quite easy, which is a big deal, isn't it? Because one of the issues we often find, and please tell me, is it the same in Australia? Over here, teachers sort of struggle sometimes with their confidence with technology. Is that something you find as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think everyone is always at a different level when it comes to using technology. You know, we always know that there's those people that run and love, and that's definitely myself. Like, I'm a big one to use that technology, but we know that there's always going to be those people in that beginner stage and those people that sort of just sit in the background and go, yeah, it looks great, but then find it really hard to build up that confidence to try something new. And I think one of the things that I've learned, both in Australia and in London, supporting so many educators, is it's really important to just have a go. Know that technology, as much as we love it, it will fail at some point. And if you can overcome that fact, you know, our students are learning every day and they're learning how to use technology. They know that it won't always work. And so we just need to go along that same journey with them.
Great, thank you, Rachel. I want to dig into a sort of leadership perspective as well, because it's all very well and good knowing that. Right, so that's good advice for somebody who's listening who maybe be a teacher in a classroom, right? Because it is important to be all sort of Carol Dweck about it and have a growth mindset and be resilient, just as you'd like your learners. But how do you ensure that teachers, from a leadership perspective, how do you give them that confidence to have a go? Have you got any sort of tips around that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I think for senior leaders, it's really trying to embrace the importance of technology. You know, bringing in that equity of access is so important when we think about technology in the classroom, and ultimately from a senior leadership perspective, you're the ones driving that message, that vision in your schools. And so if you're championing that for your teachers within your school and really encouraging and using training, I think is a big thing. Not only getting people to come in and talk, because we know that teachers really spark off that excitement of actually hearing from a different voice. Yes, there's power in getting your own teachers to talk to technology and how they're using it, but it is really sort of using the community of wonderful educators that we have and keeping that momentum going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so that idea of having external voices come in, because it's all very well and good being that person in school.
Yeah.
But if it's always like the Rachel or the Mark show, then what's different?
Exactly.
And are other schools doing that? Bringing out external voices could be a really good driver for those sorts of conversations. So brilliant. So thank you for that, Rachel. You mentioned something which is important to me and to hopefully most people in the EdTech space. You mentioned the idea of equity of access.
Yeah.
Right. You've worked with big trusts here in the UK. Have you got any advice on how you can ensure sort of equity of access when obviously there is such a big divide, isn't there, between those that have and those that don't have technology?
So I think one of the things is that we know that technology can be expensive, but ultimately if we look beyond the cost value, we know that actually technology can empower all learners, and so we need to move beyond just being able to support those students that may struggle and have those different needs, and actually how every student can benefit. I think, you know, as teachers and as senior leaders, we know those children that unfortunately just sort of coast through school all the way, that they're never really going above and beyond, and they're never sort of struggling behind, and ultimately we want to be able to provide that equity of access and be able to give students and meet students where they are. And we sort of talk a lot about equality and accessibility, and that's really not just providing access to technology, but actually making sure that we're putting all of the right supports in place for everyone, because we know ultimately everyone can benefit from different tools that are available.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll dive into particularly the accessibility stuff, which I know you're really passionate about in just a moment, but I was keen to understand and unpick, because it's important we sort of get a global feel for this. So, the questions I was asking in around equity of access, talk about your work here in the UK with trusts and things, obviously a very UK specific focus there, but do you see similar things in Australia?
So I think it's a question that I get asked a lot of times, and there is a real strong digital divide, unfortunately, in Australia. I think one of the things, you know, we don't like to talk about COVID anymore, but I think one of the things that the UK did quite well was really provide digital devices to those low socioeconomic families, and unfortunately in Australia we didn't really do that. And so there is a transition to really empower and put those devices in, but it is varied. So I work with schools across Australia, and you know, there'll be some schools you'll go in and it'll be one-to-one. There'll be other schools where it's just a small handful of devices. So it does vary, and that makes it really challenging.
And so I've worked in a few places in Australia in schools. Do you find that tends to be, the hubs, as it were, are more the independent schools versus the...
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so it's quite similar, I guess. You know, independents where they've got the money, they're able to provide those devices directly to students, whereas the other schools that sort of don't have that funding are sort of utilising parents to be able to provide those devices, or do sort of a loan system in place for there as well.
Yeah. Well, we mentioned accessibility before, and as you might sort of guess, looking at her T-shirt here, Rachel now works at Texthelp, a massive leveller in terms of providing equity of access. I've got Patrick McGrath from Texthelp coming over later to talk about universal design for learning. It's something he shares with me an awful lot, and I'm sort of a manager and sort of through the business as well. A lot of your tools are essential for some, but useful for all.
Everyone.
I think that's quite true with all sorts of technology, or I'd like to hope that people are using it in sort of ways. Could you share or sort of shine a spotlight on the ways in which you're working with schools to try and make that actually a reality for them? Yeah,
so I think a lot of our work sort of does stem around sort of learning support, Senkos, who very much are focused on supporting individual students, and what we're trying to do is work really closely with senior leaders to get them to understand that actually some of those supports that we put in place are actually useful for everyone. You know, the research shows that more and more adults are watching TV with closed captions as a really basic one. And, you know, a lot of people use text-to-speech and we don't even know that it's text-to-speech. You know, if we're driving in a car, we'll have Siri reading our messages to us when we're driving. That is text-to-speech. So it's, you know, there are so many ways that actually we can all benefit from having access to that. And you know, if we don't show someone, it goes back to that question around technology and empowering people to use it. If we talk about, you know, what we don't know, we don't know. Like, unfortunately, it is what it is. You know, until you're shown, until you see what's capable, you sort of just go along with how it is. And I think, you know, in 2024, what we need to do is we need to step beyond that confidence level and step into the unknown and really embrace those opportunities.
It's interesting you mentioned that you don't know what you don't know sort of thing as well, because people will, you know, say, you know, hey Siri, call mum or whatever when they're driving their car or navigation, and they don't even realise that it's called text-to-speech.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes they don't even realise you're doing these things, you know. Listen, so many great things. Please do follow Rachel on social at TechMissC. She is such a great person to follow, and and sort of, again, timeline, particularly Instagram, I would say, was where I sort of really first came across Rachel and her sharing so many great ideas, so many great things that you can learn from her. And of course, if you want to learn more about Texthelp, I'm sure she'd be very happy to have a conversation around all those sort of things as well too. Thank you so much for the conversation, Rachel. And thank you for joining us on this episode of Insights from NetSupport here live from BET 2024. Thanks.